Chapter 21 of Blindfolded. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Roger Moline. Blindfolded by Earle Ashley Walcott. Chapter 21. At the Bidding of the Unknown. The windows of Borton's shone cheerfully, although it was past midnight. At our cautious approach a signal was given, and with the answering word a man appeared from the obscurity. "All safe?" I inquired. "It's all right," said Barkhouse. "There's a dozen men in the barroom, and I'm not sure there ain't some of the hounds amongst them. But you're to go in the side door, and right upstairs. Two of you may keep at the foot of the stairs, just inside the door," I said. "You may stand watch outside, Barkhouse." There was sound of rude song, and the clink of glass and bottle in the bar and dining room, as I passed through the side hall. But the door was closed, and I saw nothing of the late revelers. In the upper hallway Mother Borton stood by an open door, silhouetted dark and threatening against the dim flickerings that came from the candle in the room behind her. I had but opened my mouth to give her word of greeting when she raised a warning claw, and then seizing me, drew me swiftly into the room and closed and locked the door. "How are you, dearie?" she said, surveying me with some apparent pride. "You're safe and whole, ain't you?" As the candle light fell on her face, she seemed older and more like a bird of prey than ever. The nose and chin had taken a sharper cast, the lines of her face were deeper drawn with the marks of her evil life, and her breath was strong with the strength of waterfront whiskey. But her eyes burned bright and keen as ever in their sunken sockets, with the fire of her fevered brain behind them. "I am safe," I said, "though I had a close shave in Chinatown." "I heerd of it," said Mother Borton sourly. "I reckon it ain't much good to set up nights to tell you how to take care of yourself. It's a wonder you ever growed up. Your mammy must have been mighty careful about herdin' ye under cover whenever it rained." "I was a little to blame," I admitted, "but your warning was not thrown away. I thought I was well guarded." Mother Borton sniffed contemptuously. "I suppose you come down here alone?" "No." And I explained the disposition of my forces. "That's not so bad," she said. "They could get up here soon enough, I reckon, if there was a row. But I guess you didn't think I sent for you just to tell you was a fool in Chinatown." I admitted that I should have expected to wait till morning for such a piece of information. "Well," said Mother Borton, "that ain't it. Something's up." "And what might it be?" I inquired. "The moon?" Mother Borton did not take this flippancy kindly. Her face grew darker and more evil as it was framed in the dancing shadows behind her. "You can get a knife in ye as easy as winkin' if I'll just keep my mouth shut," she cried spitefully. "Yes," said I repentantly, putting my hand upon her arm, "but you are my very good friend, and will tell me what I ought to know." The creature's face lighted at my tone and action, and her eyes melted with a new feeling. "That I will," she said. "That I will, as if you were my own boy." She seized my hand and held it as she spoke, and looked intently, almost lovingly, on my face. Elsewhere I could have shivered at the thought of her touch. Here, with the bent figure amid the gloomy shadows of the den in which we sat, with the atmosphere of danger heavy about us, I was moved by a glow of kindly feeling. "I was a-listenin' to 'em," she continued in a low, earnest tone, glancing around fearfully, as if she had the thought that some one else might be listening in turn. "I was a-listening, and I heerd what they says." "Who said?" I inquired. "The ones you knows on," she returned mysteriously. "What ones?" I persisted, though I supposed she meant to indicate some of my energetic enemies. Mother Borton paid no attention to my question, and continued, "I know they was a-talking about you, and they says they would cut your liver out if they found you there." "And where is there?" I asked with growing interest. "That's what I was listening to find out," said Mother Borton. "I couldn't hear much of what they says, but I hears enough to get an idea." "Well?" I said inquiringly, as she hesitated. She bent forward and hissed rather than whispered, "They've found out where the boy is." "Are you certain?" I asked in sudden alarm. "Pretty sure," she said. "Pretty sure. Now you won't go near the place, will you, dearie?" she continued anxiously. "You forget that I haven't the first idea where the boy is hidden," I returned. "Oh, Lord, yes. I reckon my mind's going," grunted Mother Borton. "But I'm afeard of their knives for you." "I wish I could give warning," said I, much disturbed by the information. "The protector of the boy ought to know about this. I'm afraid I have done wrong." Mother Borton looked at me fixedly. "Don't you worry, my dear. She'll know about it all right." Again the feeling stole over me that this woman knew more than she told. But I knew that it was useless to question her directly. I considered a moment, and then decided to trust her with a secret which might surprise her into admitting her knowledge. "I suspect that she knows already. I got a note tonight," said I, drawing from my pocket the envelope I had received from the unknown. Mother Borton seized it, looked for a moment at the firm, delicate hand of the address, and drew out the sheet that it enclosed. "Read it, dearie," she said, handing it back after a scrutiny. "I can't tell anything but big print." I suspected that Mother Borton was trying to deceive me, but I repeated the words of the note. "Send 6 men to 8 o'clock boat. Come with 1 in hack to courtyard of the Palace Hotel at 7:40. Mother Borton's face changed not a whit at the reading, but at the end she nodded. "She knows," she said. "What does it mean?" I asked. "What is to happen?" "Don't go, dearie. You won't go, will you?" "Yes," I said. "I must go." "Oh," she wailed, "you may be killed. You may never come back." "Nonsense," said I. "In broad daylight, at the Palace Hotel? I'm much more likely to be killed before I get home tonight." Her earnestness impressed me, but my resolution was not shaken. Mother Borton rested her head on the table in despair at my obstinacy. "Well, if you will, you will," she said at last. "And an old woman's warnings are nothing to you. But if you will put your head in the traps, I'll do my best to make it safe after you get it there. You just sit still, honey." And she took the candle and went to a corner where she seated herself at a stand. Her shadow grew very large, and her straggling locks sent streamers of blackness dancing on the grimy ceiling. The weird figure, thrown into bold relief by the candle-lighted wall beyond it, while all else was in obscurity, gave an uncanny feeling that turned half to dread as I looked upon her. What secret did she hold? What was the danger she feared? Mother Borton appeared to have some difficulty in arranging her words to her liking. She seemed to be writing, but the pen did not flow smoothly. At last she was done, and, sealing her work in an envelope, she brought the flickering light once more to the table. "Take that," she said, thrusting the envelope into my hand. "If you find a one-eyed man when you git into trouble, give him that letter I've writ you, and it may do you some good. It's the best I can do for you. You better go now and get some sleep. You may need it." I thanked Mother Borton and pressed her hand, and she held the candle as I tiptoed down the stairs, joined my waiting guards, and went out into the night. The fresh, cool air of the early morning hours was grateful after the close and tainted atmosphere of the den we had left, but I had other things to think of than the pleasure of once more filling my lungs. "Where are Barkhouse and Phillips?" I asked, as we turned our faces toward the west. Porter gave a low whistle, and, as this failed to bring an answer, followed it with one louder and more prolonged. We listened, but no response came. "We'd better get out of here," said Wilson. "There's no telling what may happen when they hear that whistle." "Hist! What's that?" said Porter, drawing me back into a doorway. There were running steps on the block above us, and I thought a shadow darted from one side of the street to the other. "There seem to be friends waiting for us," said I. "Just get a good grip of your clubs, boys, and keep your revolvers handy in case they think they have a call to stop us." "Hold on," said Porter. "There's a gang of 'em there. I see a dozen of 'em, and if we're the ones they're after, we had better cut for it." "I believe you are right," said I, peering into the darkness. I could see a confused mass, but whether of men or boxes I could only guess. "We'll go up here, and you can cut around the other way," said Porter. "There's no need for you to risk it." "There's no need for anyone to risk it. We'll cut together." "This way, then," said Wilson. "I know this part of town better than you do. Run on your toes." And he darted past Borton's and plunged into an alley that led toward the north. Porter and I followed as quietly as possible through the dark and noisome cutoff to Pacific Street. Wilson turned toward the bay, and crossing the street at the next corner, followed the main thoroughfare to Broadway. "I guess we're all right now," he gasped as we turned again to the west. "But we'd best keep to the middle of the street." And a little later we were in sight of the house of mystery which fronted, forbidding and gloomy as ever, on Montgomery Street. "Where's Barkhouse?" I asked of Trent, who was on guard. "He hasn't come in, sir. Phillips got here a bit ago, and I think he has something to report." As Phillips had been sent scouting with Barkhouse, I thought it likely, and called him to my room. "No, sir, I didn't see Bob for nigh of an hour before I came back. Not after we got to Borton's." "I left him just outside the door," I said. "Then you seen him after I did. I was following two fellows down to the den, you know, and that was the last I seen of Bob." I understood that the den was one of the meeting places of the enemy. "Did you find anything there?" "Not a thing. The two fellows went in, but they didn't come out. Another gang of 3 comes along and goes in, but none of 'em shows up again, and I reckoned they'd gone to bed. So I takes it as a hint and comes up here." "I suppose it would have done no good to wait." "You don't think Bob's been took, do you?" I did feel uneasy over the absence of the stalwart scout, and but for the orders I had received for the morning, I should have had my forces out to find him, or get a hostage in exchange. But as it was, I dissembled my fears and made some reassuring reply. At the earliest light of the morning I was once more astir, but half refreshed by my short and broken rest, and made my dispositions for the day. I ordered Porter, Fitzhugh, Brown, Wilson, Lockhart, and Abrams to wait for me at the Oakland ferry. Trent, who was still weak from his wound, I put in charge of the home guard, with Owens, Phillips, and Larson as his companions, and gave instructions to look for Barkhouse, in case he did not return. Wainwright I took with me, and, hailing a hack, drove to the Palace Hotel. There was a rattle of wagons and a bustle of departing guests as we drove into the courtyard of the famous hostelry. The 8 o'clock boat was to carry the passengers for the eastbound overland train, and the outgoing travelers were filling the place with noise and confusion. I stepped out of the hack and looked about me anxiously. Was I to meet the unknown, or was I to take orders from some emissary of my hidden employer? No answering eye met mine as I searched the place with eager glance. Neither woman nor man of all the hurrying crowd had a thought for me. The hotel carriages rattled away, and comparative quiet once more fell on the court. I looked impatiently about. Was there some mistake? Had the plans been changed? But as I glanced at the clock that ticked the seconds in the office of the hotel, I saw that I had been early, and that it was even now but 20 minutes to the hour. The minute hand had not swept past the figure 8 when the door opened, there was a hurried step, and 2 women stood before me, leading a child between them. Both women were closely veiled, and the child was muffled and swathed till its features could not be seen. One of the women was young, the other older, perhaps middle-aged. Both were tall and well-made. I looked eagerly upon them, for one of them must be the unknown, the hidden employer, whose task had carried Henry Wilton to his death, who held my life in her hands, and who fought the desperate battle with the power and hatred of Doddridge Knapp. I was conscious of some disappointment. I could not say why. But neither of the women filled the outline of the shadowy picture my fancy had drawn of the unknown. Neither gave impression of the force and decision with which my fancy had endowed the woman who had challenged the resources and defied the vengeance of the wolf. So much I took to my thoughts in the flash of an eye as they approached. It was to the younger that I turned as the more likely to have the spirit of contest, but it was the older who spoke. "Here is your charge, Mr. Wilton," she said in a low, agitated voice. As she spoke I felt the faint suggestion of the peculiar perfume that had greeted me from the brief letters of the unknown. "I am ready for orders," I said with a bow. It was apparently a mere business matter between us. I had fancied somehow that there had been a bond of friendship, as much as of financial interest, between Henry Wilton and his employer, and felt the sense of disappointment once more. "Your orders are in this envelope," said the unknown, hurriedly thrusting a paper into my hand. "Drive for the boat, and read them on the way. You have no time to lose." The younger woman placed the child in the hack. "Climb in, Wainwright," said I, eyeing the youngster unfavorably. "Will he travel with us, ma'am? He's rather young." "He'll go all right," said the elder woman with some agitation. "He knows that he must. But treat him carefully. Now, good-bye." "Oakland Ferry, driver," I cried, as I stepped into the hack and slammed the door. And in a moment we were dashing out into New Montgomery Street, and with a turn were on Market Street, rolling over the rough cobbles toward the bay. Chapter 21. Recording by Roger Moline.